Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector and the host of the Go Collect speculation video. In this episode, we are going to spend some time talking about 6 blog posts that have been sent in to Go Collect. This first blogger does something that I think is really cool. This second blog post is actually near and dear to my heart. So this next blog post is right up my alley. I want to play a game. The MCU has done some pretty interesting things, right? The folks over at Go Collect, it was all about more than meeting the eye. You could potentially get ahead of the curve, and we all know that Marvel is going to do something with Daredevil. While we are on this topic of Spider-Man, we have to acknowledge the elephant that is in the room, and the elephant is Miles Morales, a 3.5 sold. So there you have it. We have reached the end of another Go Collect weekly recap. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and we'll tune in next week.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wizard World Virtual Experiences. I'm your host, Jerry Milani, and today a special day for baseball fans, for Mets fans. And, well, if you remember 1969 or you've seen it on replay, we're going to have a lot of fun with the 1969 Amazing Mets today. We'll get to that in just a second. And whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or our Twitch page, go on ahead and enter your questions, your comments, your chats right in that chat room. We have folks, we're going to be looking that over, try to get the best questions and try to get as many of them answered as we can in the next 40 or 45 minutes or so. And we have these 2 great stars from the New York Mets 1969 championship season, a team that, as you know, came out of nowhere if you're a baseball fan and won the whole darn thing. I want to remind fans that in addition to this live Q&A that we're pleased to bring to you, you have the opportunity for some paid opportunities with these guys. You can either get a live video chat, which we'll be doing on Sunday. So if you're watching this live or on replay, you still have time until Sunday at 2 o'clock to be able to do the live chats individually, or you can get a recorded video that the guys will do for you, and a free autographed photo comes with that, just $60. So it's a tremendous deal if you've seen the autograph market or the opportunity just to have a live video chat. That when have you ever been able to do that? Now is your opportunity to do that. So you go to Wizard World Virtual and learn all the details there. As well, you can go to the Wizard World Vault. The Wizard World Vault has accumulated memorabilia, collectibles from 20 plus years of Wizard World events. There's a lot of baseball cards on there. There's some Met stuff, some Yankee stuff. So whatever you're a fan of, there is some great memorabilia and collectibles there. Speaking of collectibles, Go Collect is your #1 source for collectibles. They track the sales of graded comics and have robust analysis tools for their users. They stay active on social media. They have giveaways every week. Go Collect also has an expansive blog with topics on comic book speculations, video games, concert posters. They're going to have price guides for some of those things as well coming up very soon. Go Collect's goal is very simple. No matter what you love to collect, they want to make collecting better. Be sure to check them out at gocollect.com, and that includes baseball cards. So for sure, if you are a fan of any kind of collecting, Go Collect is the place to go. One more quick item to talk about just before we get started. Tonight at 7 o'clock, we have Whiz Quiz coming up with our own Mike G Does Things, kicking off a great week of activity in the next few days coming up here on Wizard World Virtual Experiences. On Saturday, 1 o'clock, if you love Sons of Anarchy, we're going to have some guests from that show here at the 1 o'clock Eastern time on Wizard World Virtual Experiences. Next Tuesday at 4 o'clock, it's the cast of Smallville. And then Wednesday at 7 o'clock, we have a special guest, Charles Learson, an author. He wrote the book Butch Cassidy, which is coming out, and you may be familiar with that name, Charles Learson. He also wrote a book on Ty Cobb that came out a couple of years ago. And we're not going to be going all the way back to the days of Ty Cobb in this one, but we are going back to 1969 to talk to today's guest. First, he was born in the Bronx, a member of the original Mets in 1962, and a huge part of the 1969 champions. He signed with the Mets right out of high school and spent his entire 18-year career in orange and blue. He amassed 1,400 plus hits, 118 home runs. Here is Mets Hall of Famer, the great Ed KRANEPOOL. There he is.
How are you?
Ed, it's great to see you. Welcome.
I'm feeling great, and I'm looking forward to the program. We should have some fun with the fans.
Yeah, this will be some fun. Again, fans, if you're watching on Twitch or Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and put your questions right into the comments. We'll get the best ones answered, do as many as we can throughout the next 40 minutes or so. When you think of the 1969 Mets, maybe your first thought is of a certain game-saving diving catch in Game 4. This 9-year major leaguer was the right fielder who made that grab. He went on to a career as a sportscaster in Milwaukee and in New Orleans, where he lives now. And he has a great memoir out, if you've read it, called Here's the Catch. Say hello to Ron SWOBODA.
And there he is. How are you, Jim?
I'm well. Yourself, Ron?
We're feeling good, man. I just turned 76 years old, and I'm playing golf and trying to stay safe and survive and have a little fun in New Orleans with my wife of 54 years, Cecilia.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, folks, if you are a Mets fan from that era or any other, definitely pick up. And there's been some good books that came out the last couple of years. Wayne Coffey's book was excellent. Our friend Art Shamsky, who was going to be on this today, but unfortunately had a scheduling conflict. He also put out a great book as well. But I really enjoyed Here's the Catch. I wrote a couple of reviews on it and really loved it. So thank you for providing that to everyone as well.
You know what's another good read? I just read one called The Southern League by Larry Colton. He's a former player. It's about the Southern League of minor league baseball. When baseball came back to Birmingham, Alabama, it was the first integrated team. And that was my first year in organized baseball. So I knew a bunch of guys off that team. Some of them played with the New York Mets along the way. Larry Stahl, an outfielder, Tommy Reynolds, an outfielder, and Joe Grisenda. Shaky Joe was the left-handed pitcher. Pitched for the Mets one year.
I actually played in that Southern League also. I was with Knoxville, which happened to be a Detroit chain. I played there for 3 weeks and never got in a ball game. And I finally called our general manager, Johnny Murphy. I said, "Why'd you send me here?" He said, "Well, they're supposed to be playing you." I said, "But the guy told me, the manager said, this is a Detroit chain. You're not playing, Ed. You're going to sit here all summer." I said, "I'm getting out of here." It was not
I never
fun.
knew that. I never knew that.
No, it was beautiful scenery down in the, Knoxville, the Smoky Mountains. It was great.
Yeah.
I played against some pretty good guys down there. Bill Fall, I guess you remember him in the major
Fall.
leagues. Very
With
creative
Cubs.
pitcher. He was there. Willie Smith was there. Willie Horton. There was a lot of guys there, in that league. It was unbelievable. I saw Tony Oliver in that league. There was a lot of good players in the Sally League, the Southern League.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that happening today, guys, having one of your top prospects just loaned out to another. Yeah, take him for a while. Don't play him. Just take him for a while.
Well, the thing is that, their first baseman got hot, but I get down there in the first night, and Frank Coswell was the manager, nice guy. He said, "Ed, I don't know what you're doing here." He says, "We're a Detroit chain. I'll give you batting practice every day. Come out early. You can work out. You can do whatever you want, but you're not getting into a ball game." And I'm shaking myself to, saying, "What the hell am I doing here? This is a vacation." In the Knoxville. It's beautiful, but
I never
wasn't much baseball.
That's amazing.
I wound up going to Auburn, and that was a good little city up there, outside of Syracuse, and we won the championship. But it was D baseball, so the Mets, we really didn't have any franchises back in those days. We had a part working agreement with Syracuse. We then had Auburn as the only other team we had. So you either went to Syracuse, and I stayed there for a couple of weeks. Then they sent me to Knoxville. Then they sent me to Auburn. And then the Instructional League, which was really exciting because that's where I met Cleon Jones. And Paul Blair was with the Mets in 1962 in the Instructional League. And they're trying to make him a left-handed hitter. And I'm looking at a kid that he struck out 110 times, I think, in the minor leagues that year. And they said, "Well, we got to switch you to be a switch hitter." The best center fielder the Mets would have ever had. And we lose him in the draft to Baltimore because
they failed to protect him. They
Yeah.
failed to protect him as a first-year player.
Right.
And the next time we saw him, I saw him in Double-A. When I played most of my first year at Williamsport in Double-A, And he was at Elmira with the Orioles, of course, and you could see right then and there, he was a great outfielder and a pretty darn good hitter. And it wasn't long before he was in the big leagues and playing a long time, one of the top 2 or 3 center fielders ever in the game.
Yeah, he won a lot of Gold Gloves, and we lost him for nothing. I think it was $8,000 the Mets got back for him. You know, what a waste. We had some of the best center fielders in baseball. We had Amos Otis. We traded him. We had Paul Blair. You know, we had a lot of good young players, you know, and the Mets made a lot of bad trades in the early years. They got raped every time they made a trade.
Well, they traded Amos Otis for a third baseman, Joe Foy, who died of a drug overdose a few years back. They traded Nolan Ryan a year or so later for Jim Fregosi, to play third base. And you know, Hodges knocked him out with a ground ball. He broke his thumb.
Yeah, but there was a total of 4 players in that trade. The Mets gave 4 players for Jim Fregosi, and he lasted about a year. Jim was a nice guy, but you know, he was kind of over the hill when we got that. And then, of course, you know what Nolan Ryan became. You know, forget about it. He set all kinds of record.
That's why they say some of the best deals are the ones you don't make. And actually, in 1969, you might remember there was all this talk in spring training when we were in St. Petersburg. The Mets were talking with the Braves about acquiring Joe Torre.
Right.
And of course, the Braves wanted to get into our young pitching. They wanted guys like Gary Gentry and they take Jerry Kuzman as well, but they were looking for young arms, maybe Jim McAndrew and guys that could really bring it. And they probably were looking for you too. They wouldn't mind having a left-handed hitting first baseman. And the Mets refused to make the trade for all that young pitching. And of course, we end up facing the Braves. They trade Joe Torre to the Cardinals straight up for Orlando Cepeda, and they don't get the pitching they were looking for. And you had to feel like pitching was the difference between those 2 teams when it came down to the National League playoffs in 1969, and you left-handers knocked them out of the box. The left-handed platoon outscored Henry Aaron, Cepeda, Rico Cardi, a pretty good lineup.
Yeah, you're not kidding. And we beat them 3 straight down in Atlanta. But I almost got traded that spring also, but I don't know whether you remember that. It's to Detroit. I was supposed to go to Detroit that year because the year before I had a disagreement with Gil Hodges. You remember that, Ronnie? We got into a little bit of a hassle, and they were going to trade me.
You and I were the pets, weren't we?
Yeah, that was it. And I never got traded. And luckily for me, we wound up winning the pennant that year, and I was glad because here it is, 50 some odd years later.
Names? Did you have any? Did you hear any names they were looking for?
Well, they were coming after me, and I thought, you know, when I went there the last at the end of spring training, you know, the writer said, well, you probably won't be going back to St. Petersburg, you know, so that was very comforting to take that bus ride over there, you know, knowing that you might be traded. But, you know, it never happened. And of course, that trade never went off, and I stayed around another 10 years. So, and then finally, I outlasted all those managers, and I finally got traded myself. I figured I'd retire, and I did, 1979.
Well, 18 years is a pretty good run in any era of baseball, is the way.
Yeah, if we were playing today, I'd still be playing because I wouldn't retire. They got to steal the uniform. You know, there's no way I'm not playing a season. You know, I'll tell you what, it's nice to be playing today. Of course, this year is going to be difficult for the guys. I don't know whether you ever played before, you know, a noiseless stadium. I played in Japan one year when the Mets made a goodwill trip over there in Hiroshima, and we had 50,000 people in the stands. We didn't hear a sound for 9 innings. It was the most eerie feeling not to have any reaction from the fans, and we couldn't wait to leave the ballpark. So these guys are going to go through an experience that's difficult because you know how the fans can be. They excite you. They get behind you. They're a big advantage when they come to New York. You know, the Met fans are the greatest, you know. So, you know, when you don't have anybody saying anything, those cardboard figures are not going to speak. And I'll tell you what, my face is not going to be on one.
It's like on a movie set, they use those cardboard people in the stadium sometimes. You don't have to feed them and you don't have to pay them.
Right.
I think the other thing about the 60-game season they have planned this year, starting at the end of this month, is, we're in a pandemic and guys are going to get sick. And some guys have opted out because of their fear of contracting COVID-19. And, I wonder how good the bet is that you can make it through 60 games. I'm glad they're trying. I'm really happy that they're going to try and put it back on the field, but I wonder if they're going to make it through.
It's going to be tough, but I hope they do. If they really watch themselves and they use the mask, it's what they do when they leave the field. That's the important thing, that they don't circulate with crowds and stuff like that. I know yourself, Ronnie, you had some problems last year, and myself, we've been contained. I've been in the house for 4 months, and I avoid crowds, and you kind of listen to what the doctors are telling you, to wear a mask and just don't be around large crowds of people, and I won't go in a restaurant, unfortunately, and I miss it. I haven't missed too many meals in the last 40 years.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's tough.
But we're in that age group. I mean, you had a kidney transplant. I had a triple bypass. We're both we're both in that at the age of 76. We're in that look out age group. Be careful, and we're trying to.
You're in the high risk. I'm going to be 76 in November, so we're all close together. If you remember, our team grew up together. Tug McGraw would be 76 now. All those guys. Koozy's a little older. He's 2 years older, but Seaver's the same age as us. And so is Buddy Harrelson, who were having some troubles. I mean, we're at that vulnerable stage, so you got to be careful nowadays. So any of the fans out there that are listening, please watch yourself, be careful, wear a mask, and, and hopefully maybe by September we can get to the ballpark.
Boy, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, it's excellent advice. And you mentioned the fans, Ed. There's a bunch of them who've chimed in with some questions already. So we're going to go with the first one we got here from Jeanette Obremski. She wants to know what it felt like to be immortalized as a World Series winner. What was the feeling like at the parade, having all of New York behind you?
All right,
well, 69, you'd never forget it. People in New York do not let you forget any of that. They're still talking about it 51 years later. It's amazing. You could walk down the streets in Manhattan when times were good and people would stop you on the streets and want to talk about and tell you that they were at the ballpark and they have the grass and they created their own lawns with some of the grass at the ballpark. It was amazing to be at that parade in the city. You can't build on that stuff. I mean, you can't forget it. It's great to wake up. Memories are tremendous, and the fans in New York always been great.
Yeah, I can identify with that in the sense that what a thrill at the age I'm at now to sign an autograph to someone and right underneath 1969 world champs. And you can do that forever, I've only played 9 years in the major leagues, but the idea that I was lucky enough to be on that 69 team and, lucky enough that the Orioles had a couple of left-handed pitchers. Otherwise, I wouldn't have seen any of the postseason because we were a strict platoon in my area. Sham was having a great year from the left side of the plate, and Hodges was a strict platoon, and so I got to play against the Orioles a couple of games and got to do a little something.
But Ronnie, in that World Series, you had the opportunity to play a couple of games, and you made, I think, the greatest catch in the World Series under that crucial situation, what was coming up, for you to go diving in right field and come up with that ball and make a great throw to home plate. That was really amazing. And look, it's changed your life. People talk about that forever.
You tell me, you were sitting there in the dugout when that happened. Did everybody yell, no, 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 no? Oh, wow, what a great catch.
Ronnie, I don't want to lie, Ronnie. I don't want to lie. But when you started going for it, we all said, oh, no.
Oh, no.
You got to be kidding me. Catch it, Rocky. I was hoping maybe if you missed it, maybe it hit you in the head and it came back to the infield or something. Because that was a home run. That was an inside park. But you know what? It turned out great. and people will never let you forget it because you know what? They shouldn't. It was a great catch, and you know what? It's always on the replays.
If the best play you ever make in your life as an outfielder is in Game 4 of a World Series that you go on to win, that's good timing, the way I look at it.
You're right. That's the time to do it. You're right.
So again, fans chiming in all over the place. At Jeff Healy 8 wants to know what it means to you guys were part of this team before the 69 champion. Ed, you go all the way back to the start of the franchise. Ron, you're you were on those teams that were on the way up. What did it mean to be together as a core, winning it all together after having been through the losing teams?
Well, like I said earlier, a lot of us were the same age growing up. I mean, and some of the guys were added to the ball club after I started in 62. 62 was very tough for me. My roommate was Frank Thomas, who was 35. I was 17. I really didn't have a lot in common with him or any of the other players. They were all in their mid-30s, and here's a 17-year-old kid. I couldn't even go out with these guys. They had a drink after a ball game, and I certainly wasn't allowed to do that. So it made it very difficult, and losing is very tough. That's contagious, just like winning is. But when you start adding young players and they come to the ball club, you develop relationships. It's great. I room with Ron SWOBODA. I room with Tug McGraw. These are guys that were forever your friends. I mean, I know Ronnie since 1960, 4 or 5, whatever you came up.
Yeah, my first spring training.
That's a lot of years to know somebody and still be talking all these years later and having so much fun together. We still socialize together, you know. So, but New York, you know, loved us. When we won, that's the key. They liked the Mets in the beginning, and they had fun with Casey Stengel from a player standpoint. Winning is the only thing that counts. You know, we used to celebrate rainouts in the early years. I mean, you know, when you lost so many games, 120 games a year, everything they write is negative. And at some point, you get tired of reading about all that negative publicity. Even now in today's newspapers, all you're seeing is negative things, is, you know, COVID-19 and stuff like that. We all want some positive news and go on with our life. And that's what we wanted with the Mets. We wanted to start winning. I know I was glad to see all the young guys coming on the ball club. And when I saw Seaver and Kuzman and Gentry and those arms coming, you didn't want to face them. You didn't want to face those guys. Nolan Ryan, they would have never traded Nolan Ryan if they asked the players, because we knew what it was like to hit against him in spring training. That was no fun. There was no way you wanted to face him.
Yeah, and you talked about it, Eddie. When you lose a bunch of years, 100 games a year, you feel like you've earned the right. And then when Hodges showed up in 68, you knew the franchise was operating under a little different principle, and you better get your act together. You better think about winning. We were directed towards it. Those arms were, you know, they were the pride and joy. We used to think sometimes us hitters were, you know, second-class citizens because they took care of those arms. They didn't want the wind blowing on them. They didn't want anything to interrupt or in any way injure those great arms they had in Seaver and Kuzman and Ryan and Gentry and, you know, McGraw and those kind of guys. I mean, McAndrews in there as well.
How about Bibby and Bob Johnson, who couldn't make our ball club? They wound up becoming stars in the National League. I mean, yeah. we had no place for these guys. Batting practice, as you remember, Ronnie, in spring training, was 10 swings. That's a joke. 10 swings against Nolan Ryan. You missed 9 of them and you foul 1 off. I mean, what's the big deal? Now they walk off the mound and they're not pitching anymore. So we couldn't wait to face, you know, Yogi and those guys. That was the smart guys. That's us.
Well, I think, I think we realized that the 100-game losing seasons were over when Hodges showed up and all those great arms. And of course, 1968, we got a little better. In 1969, things started happening.
You're right. Thanks. We started to win.
Another great question here from Anj C. wants to know, she said that they've been showing the Miracle Mets repeatedly since 4th grade and been a fan ever since. What's your favorite nickname for the team? You like Miracle Mets or do you like Amazins better?
I like the Amazins. Casey Stengel used to say, amazing, 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 amazing. And I was like,
yeah. I think
that
amazing.
sums it up.
I think amazing was, we could sum it up, because it wasn't a miracle that we won in '69. When you win 107 games, 100 during the season and 7 in the playoffs and the World Series, you're supposed to win those games. 100 games is a lot of victories. You should be in the playoffs. So we became a good ball club in the June of '69, and after that we won 60 games the second half of the year. So we went into the playoffs. We were very confident against Atlanta, and then of course, Baltimore. They all thought they were going to smoke us, but you know what? Our hitters came around in the playoffs. Our pitchers faltered, but then they came back in the World Series, and both platoons. Gil did a great job of platooning. It didn't help every player's career, but you accepted it because winning is a great substitute for not playing as much as you should be.
Yep, I believe.
So true fans will know this. We lost Ed there quickly. I'll put his video back on. They've had an internet issue, but he's still with us. So true fans will understand what we mean by this. But at Diamond Diehards asks if either of you have ever owned a black cat.
I got a black cat now. Because my wife adopts cats. We've had 5 at one time. We have only 2 now, and he's the greatest. I'll tell you what, he's a feral cat that we found in the woods. We have 2 of them like that, and I think, Ronnie, you know him, Bubba.
Oh yeah,
Bubba's the greatest. He comes in the house. He comes up on my lap. They think they're dogs, and I'll tell you what, they're the greatest things to have. Maybe I keep them around, because of that black cat incident with Leo. But he's a great pet and keeps me a lot of company. And you know what? He follows me up to bed at nighttime, and you know what? I'm sleeping with a cat.
I saw that cat bring a little present up on the back porch too, because he's out there. He's a hunter. That cat is a hunter.
Yeah.
I mean, a little ground squirrel or something. He brought a little present for you and said, "Look what I got."
Yeah, and of course, my wife wants to get rid of him at that point. Some of those presents aren't too good.
Well, want to remind everyone that if you're watching on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, to go ahead and put your questions in there. And we hope you're enjoying this live free Q&A. But don't forget that Sunday at 2:00, these guys are going to be back, and you'll have the opportunity for the paid recorded video sessions. Will come with a free autograph. Also, the recorded videos that they'll do. So you have the live video chats as well as those recorded videos. And if you're watching this live or on tape, you still have that opportunity until Sunday at 2:00. Go to wizardworldvirtual.com for more information on that. Tons of great questions. Another one here from Marsha Middleton. Her question is, she said, it was wonderful seeing the 2019 tribute parade down Tom Seaver Way last year at MetLife Stadium. What was it like? How was it feeling so much love that day? Or at Citi Field, I guess.
Oh, I got to, I did get to go to the ceremony when they renamed the little street along the side of Citi Field, Tom Seaver Way, and that was a great moment. Tom couldn't be there because he's struggling with dementia and some problems. He lives out in California, grows 3.5 acres of outstanding Cabernet grapes, and they make a outstanding Cabernet wine from it, GTS. But I got to be there. His daughter Ann came, and she's kind of running with his wife Nancy. They're running the wine operation out in Calistoga, California. But she was great. She did the speaking for the family. They had all the kids and nephews there of Tom Seaver's, and it was a beautiful day. The only thing missing was Tom.
And that's unfortunate, because that statue should be up there a long time already, because he was a great player, and unfortunately he is not making any personal appearances now. It's a little difficult, but we miss him. We wish him well.
I have a couple more questions about the 69 era, and then we'll talk a little bit about the current Mets team that I know you guys follow pretty closely. But our question here is, and some fans had asked a similar, Lorraine Lucas asked about a favorite story, but talk about the difference between Gil Hodges taking over from Wes Westrum and how that kind of changed the tenor of this franchise.
Well, I think Eddie could do that one.
Well, yeah, I played under Wes Westrum, and I think, Ronnie, you were there because
Yeah, I
If
was
you
there.
remember, you and Tug and we went to Disney World one day in California, Disneyland, whatever's out there, and we got fined $100 for being out during the day going to Disneyland, where the other guys were getting fined for being out late, missing curfew. But it was like night and day. When Gil took over, he just
Easier
wanted
to
you
explain to your wife.
yeah, he wanted you to play hard, play fundamentally sound, and he had a way of playing the game to win. You don't play the game to lose those games. You want to win all those close games. And he taught the fundamentals in the spring, and he was a strict disciplinarian. And he might have not have been your best friend, and he didn't socialize with you, but you respected him, and he got the guys to play. And I tell you what, like I said earlier, I want to win. I don't want to be Wes Westrum's friend. I mean, he was a great guy, but I want to win games on the field and don't make mistakes. So, too many managers are thinking in the eighth inning what they should have done in the third inning, instead of like Gil in the third inning. He's thinking about moves that he might be making late in the ball game. So he made all those positive moves, and he made the defensive changes. He would put guys in and take them out defensively. I mean, he didn't leave you out there to, dry. When I was playing left field, for instance, if you're leaving me in the eighth inning for defense, you got to have rocks in your head. You better put a real outfielder out there, an Amos Otis out there, or somebody that can catch the ball and shag it, and
Right.
let me get my 3 at bats and put somebody in for defense. And that's what the good managers do. They win those close games, and everyone contributes.
Well, that was the thing in '69. He used everybody because we platooned at 4 or 5 slots on a regular basis. And so everybody was ready when it was their turn to play. And Hodges was agile as a manager. His brain was agile. You mentioned it. He was always ahead of the game. And, it was a relationship that I fouled up pretty good. I had trouble under his discipline, I always had a little problem with authority figures, and it was no different with Hodges, and that's all on me, because all he wanted you to do was work hard, get yourself ready to play, and shut up and just and help the team win. And I could do some of those things some of the time, but not all of them all the time. And I caused him more problems than I ever should have. And that's on me, because he was a heck of a guy and a heck of a manager.
You're right. He made all the moves, and I'll tell you what, he got us all to play. Even though none of us really liked platooning, we wound up doing it.
So just shifting gears a little, I know you guys really follow the Mets and baseball closely. The 7-Line Army has checked in with us here, one of the big Mets fan groups, and they want to know what your thoughts are on the Mets' chances in this shortened season, and how the 60 game might change the prospects for them for this year.
Well, they better get off to a good start. Hopefully they get off to a start, like they had 2 years ago. They were about 12-1 or something like that. They had a nice lead. And because in a short series, a short season, I want to be out front. I want to let the other clubs start checking in on me and having a look at the clock. Now it's like the second half of the season. You're coming down the stretch. And then when you come into September, it gets difficult to catch up on those guys, because if a couple of clubs are ahead of you, they all have to lose. And that's they don't always lose every day.
Yeah, I think, you know what, 60 games is a sprint in baseball. You better come out of the chute ready to go and full down on the gas, because 60 games going to be over in a hurry. And I think they've got enough young blood there. I like their lineup a lot. I think, everybody's looking at Diaz and saying, if Diaz is the guy he's supposed to be and commands his stuff and gets a little tilt on that slider of his, which can be devastating. You start throwing some strikes, meaningful strikes with that slider, and then you come back with 97, 98. It's a different pitch when you can throw it when you want to throw it, and when you need to throw it. And that, you need, in today's game, you got to have something to get off of that gas. You got to you got to have some off speed, something that works, that you put another thought in the hitter's mind. And he's the key guy. They've picked up a few bodies in the bullpen, and that's what their problem was last year in the full season. If they could have closed, the games they should have closed, they're in the hunt. And I think this young lineup will understand that in the 60-game season. They'll get them ready to go, and everybody's going to understand. You come out of the chute, you better come out of the chute like Secretariat.
You're right. They've added some guys. Betances from the Yankees is starting to throw the ball pretty good, and the fellow from St. Louis, Maka, he could be a surprise. He's got good stuff, So they've added a couple of guys that are going to help them.
One thing that we won't see, at least maybe until the end of the season, is crowds and anyone in the stands. So Larry Stanley has a question. At Larry Stanley says he loved the way Shea Stadium used to shake back in the day. Do you have any favorite memories of Shea Stadium? And then what are your thoughts on Citi Field?
Well, I was there at the blackouts. We lost power a couple of times.
Just passed the anniversary of that a couple of days ago.
A lot of things happened at the Shea Stadium, but it was a great stadium. When you were at second base, the whole stadium surrounded you. You were in a fishbowl. There was some noise there when they had 55,000 people. It was a tremendous feeling. That ballpark would rock, and of course, the planes used to be a lot more planes flying overhead. That was scary over there. You had to really block a lot of things out when you played at Shea Stadium.
And the other thing, too, people forget, when I came up as an outfielder in Shea Stadium, it was a tall stadium, okay? It was 3 tiers tall, like a big Globe Theater. And I talk a little bit in my memoir about how difficult it was for a kid to come to that stadium that stood that tall. Almost most fly balls never came out of the stands where people were back there moving around, the lights changing on them. It was a very mercurial background and very liquid, changing. I had trouble with it when I first came, picking the ball up off the bat. They talked about playing in the Astrodome, which wasn't an easy place to play the outfield. It was a lot tougher than Shea, but Shea still had its problems. And you saw young outfielders when they came there for the first time. You'll see some outfielders there who weren't used to playing in Shea take bad angles on balls, and all of a sudden they're not tall enough to catch them.
Yeah, fans have really brought it today with some good questions. We have another good one from at Fedawolf. Fedawolf wants to know, what player today best represents you as a player? Who do you see yourself in when you watch? It could be a Mets player or another player.
Shoot, I'd love to say Pete Alonso, but it isn't true. He's amazing.
So strong. Hey, he's like you in the beginning, Rocky.
A couple of young guys now, the game has changed so much. I don't know what they would have done with me as an as a hitter if I came up now with more hitting coaching. We didn't have a lot of hitting coaching back then. Shoot, Eddie and I sometimes threw batting practice to one another in spring training because you didn't get enough hitting. You didn't.
We had Yogi. We had Yogi as the batting coach. Always tell you, swing of the strike. Swing the bat. Yeah. That's all.
I remember Yogi saying, if you can't hit it, don't swing at it. And you go, well, Yogi, what about with 2 strikes? And he'd say, well, then you might have to swing at it. And I went, well, that clears it up.
Well, I had Roger Hornsby,
but he
couldn't
teach hitting.
He wouldn't talk to you about hitting. Roger Hornsby would look at you and say, well, they don't make them like they used to. I guess when you hit 400, I guess, you can say that, but he didn't offer us anything for 2 years. We really didn't have a batting coach, and they didn't want Ralph Kiner to help us. He was willing to do it, but they didn't want him on the field. I don't know. They were protecting that pitching so much, they just forgot about the hitters. And we all struggled, and we all could have been better hitters if you had all the machinery that they have today, with all the film that they're seeing. You're taking a look at when you're doing well and when you're doing poorly.
I believe that.
And you can see the difference on that film when you put it side by side, they can do that nowadays. And you might move your hand a little bit, or you move, making some kind of movement that you can't visualize that when you're doing it yourself. Somebody's got to point that out to you. And you get in bad habits in batting practice because the guys are throwing slow. You might have a guy throwing 70 miles an hour, and you start doing things that you really wouldn't do in the game. That's why when I looked at good hitters in the beginning, like you get a guy like Rusty was a good hitter, because in batting practice, he didn't just try to hit home runs like some of the guys do. He hit the ball to left field, to left center, right center, pulled the ball. He knew what to do with the bat, and he was a great hitter, and his record proves it out. He had over 500 hits with 4 different teams. Yeah. I mean, any place he went, he could hit. Rusty, and he helped us in '73, and if he doesn't get hurt, we probably win that World Series also. That was very discouraging to lose in '73 to Oakland. When you're leading 3-2 and you pitch the wrong guy in the 6th game and you give them an opportunity, they come back and beat you in the 7th. It's something you never forget.
Yeah, that was a good, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good A's organization and a pretty good A's team, by the way. And, you could make some mistakes on some guys in that lineup, but a lot of people talked about Seaver pitching Game 6 instead of bumping him to Game 7 and giving him an extra day's rest, because you couldn't lose the World Series in Game 6.
No.
And that's still a good discussion. And I've never gotten Tom Seaver to admit that he went into Yogi's office and asked him for the ball to pitch in Game 6. But I heard that story, and I did say, I think in my book, if I was Yogi Berra and Tom Seaver came in and asked for the ball in Game 6, you're getting the ball. And if you don't like this ball sitting on my desk, I got 4 boxes of them in the corner. You'll find one you like.
Ronnie, I was there. He didn't go in and ask to pitch. He was tired at the end of the year with all those complete games and strikeouts. Yeah. And we had a guy, we were not pitching a guy that couldn't win in the 6th game. We were supposed to pitch George Stone. He was 12-3, and he won about 7 or 8 in a row down the stretch. And he was the reason in September that we really clinched it. He pitched great for us. And then you come back with Seaver in the game in 7 games. Imagine telling Tom Seaver, if you give me 4 or 5 innings, because, late in the year, they're all tired, and you got Kuzman, Matlack, all the rest of the club. The only guy would be left not to pitch would be George Stone, because I would tell George on Saturday, George, you're out there for the afternoon. Don't look over your shoulder, because nobody's coming to get you. I'm saving 9 guys for Sunday. And with Tom Seaver starting, we're going to get 9 innings out of our pitching staff.
Well, doggone it, Eddie, you should have been managing then.
I could have been doing a lot of things, but,
baseball, and I buy that. I'm not making, that's not a joke. You could have managed in the big leagues if the opportunity was there at the right time. You had too many other things to do with your life, but you could have managed.
No, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to be in the front office. I wanted to be a general manager, because I really didn't want to deal with the players. I always felt that was a difficult situation. As a manager, you had to confront all the players every day. When you're up in the front office, you can make those decisions and do what you have to do, make trades. You don't have to deal with the players. I think the guys today would be going crazy with all the agents interfering. It's not like when we played. We had to deal one-on-one with the general managers and the managers. Sure. Now the agents do all that work, so but I still have that desire, and I still say to myself, I should have stayed in baseball and did something, and I miss it because I love the game. And we'll see. It's not over until it's over. So let's see what goes on.
Well, there you go.
And Ron, you were half jokingly saying Pete Alonso, but there's a direct line, as you know, when Pete Alonso broke Darryl Strawberry's rookie home run record. The home run record that Darryl Strawberry broke was yours.
Yeah.
For rookie home run. So it's not such a crazy thing to see yourself in him.
I sent Strawberry a note and said, thank you. Till you broke my record, nobody even knew I had one.
Ronnie started the first year. He had 15 home runs at the All-Star break. And then, they wanted to tinker a little bit with him and wanted him to hit 30 home runs. But he was a young guy coming up and just having fun. And they altered his swing a little bit. and it never clicked anymore. So sometimes you can't mess around with it. Alonzo is a good kid. He's strong. He works hard. And I saw him in spring training 2 years ago, and it was between him and Smith. And I spoke to both of those guys because, being a first baseman, you kind of encourage these guys. And you could see he has a good work ethic. I just, I expect a lot of things to happen for him this year. It's a short season, but he's a strong guy. He won't miss any games. He's not coming out of that lineup.
No, and O'Neill's a good player, and I think there's some interesting options for them offensively. I'm anxious for it to get started.
Guys, this time has really flown by. I can't tell you how much activity there's been and how many great questions from fans. I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone. Rhonda Ann Smith-Cook, a couple other folks that asked questions. Thank you for submitting those. At Tom Cavanaugh, a bunch of you submitting questions. And before we head out, just want to give you guys one more kind of chance to just talk about either a project you're working on, a charity you're working with, something you've got going you'd like to make sure the fans know about.
Well, I'm laying low right now. I don't really have anything going on right now. I'm laying low, trying to stay, under the radar, I guess, you could say it, but I'm waiting for baseball. So I'll be at the ballpark the first chance I can.
I'm like a lot of grandparents, I have 4 grandkids that live here in New Orleans, and, with the pandemic, we're trying to stay in touch with them. But at the same time, we got to be a little careful because, one of the things that can happen is, your grandkids get exposed to COVID and you want to come visit with them, and you're the wrong age group to be exposed to COVID. So we're all kind of laying low. I mean, it's Eddie, Art Shamsky, and myself last year for the 50th anniversary, we had a great time reaching out to the fans, and they put together 4 or 5 evenings where Eddie and Sham and I regaled the fans and answered their questions live in a theater. You can't do that anymore now for a while. And so this virtual thing has been a great little visit with folks. And we're looking forward to Sunday for the one-on-ones.
Yeah, remind fans that Sunday at 2:00. So if you're watching this live, or if you're even watching it on replay, those live video chats with these guys are available. $60 for some time to talk to these guys, and lifetime of memories with that. Also recorded videos, if that's more your style, having these guys record something you want them to say, maybe a voice message, whatever it is, they'll do that as well. Wizardworldvirtual.com is the place to go. We've only scratched the surface of the great 1969 Mets stories and other stories. You'll have a chance to do a little bit more with that, with those paid opportunities. But Ron and Ed, thank you so much for being with us today on behalf of New York baseball fans everywhere. We appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
And fans, thank you for being with us here on Wizard World Virtual Experiences. Don't forget, coming up later tonight at 7:00, we have that Wiz Quiz. We're kicking off a great week of some things that are going on the next few days here at Wizard World Virtual Experiences. I'm Jerry Milani. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, and have a great one.